I was made to love you. Buffy fights a sex bot, but it's not as interesting as that sounds.
We open with Buffy training and venting about the previous episode where Spike confessed his feelings about being in love with her.
She complains to Xander about how she always drives men away, including, she says, through her
remarkable self-involvement,
which was surprisingly self-aware, but then, of course, Xander tries to tell her that she's not really like that, which is not true.
He tells her to just be herself, but also points out that being next to the Hellmouth all the time is probably not the best environment.
He says she'll find a guy who loves her for her, and she hugs him, which triggered my PTSD from back when they seemed to be trying to build something between the two of them.
Meanwhile, a bright-eyed, naive-looking hitchhiker is dropped off in Sunnydale, and when asked what she's looking for, she says, true love.
Joyce shows off a new dress to her daughters as she prepares for a date, and she asks Buffy for advice, but Buffy says she has no advice to give because she's only had 2 boyfriends and they both left for good. So I guess Parker didn't count.
Yeah.
Or Owen.
And see, you forgot about Scott.
Buffy did too.
Which is another moment of self-awareness. So that's 2 in 1 episode.
Maybe Buffy is finally maturing.
Well, I was going to say she's not Buffy. It's somebody else pretending to be Buffy.
Oh, okay. It's probably a Skrull. It's probably a Marvel tie-in. Joyce tells Buffy that she's just had bad luck with her boyfriends, so apparently the theme of this episode is everyone lying to Buffy.
Meanwhile, Anya and Tara are walking and talking, which is weird because those two don't really hang out with each other.
They talk about the internet, which made it feel like a very dated episode, but the things they actually said about it were still relevant.
Well, I go online sometimes, but everyone's spelling is really bad. It's depressing.
They bump into the happy girl, who says she's looking for Warren, before moving on.
And Anya gets excited about showing Tara how to make a website later. And I was hoping we'd get to see that, but we don't. Because I wanted to know how to make a website.
I highly doubt Anya could manage HTML. Later at the Bronze, everyone is hanging out when Buffy spots Ben. You know, the guy who is actually Glory and knows that Buffy's a Slayer and maybe knows that Dawn is the key, but chooses to keep hanging out with and around Buffy.
And see, I thought it was the Bronze too, but it turns out it's somewhere on campus apparently.
Oh, it is?
I thought it was weird enough that he was at the Bronze, but now he's at this building on campus. Buffy asks Ben to dance, and it's very awkward, but he says okay, which is not the development that we need here.
The happy girl enters, which distracts Xander, and Anya nonchalantly points out that the happy girl talks like a non-human.
Which was actually kind of funny. The girl calls out for Warren, and some schlubby guy gets panicky and grabs the girl he's with and tells her they have to leave before she sees him. The happy girl asks the gang about Warren, and when they ask who that is, she just says he lost her and is looking for her, then walks off. And Tara gets jealous when Willow comments on how attractive the happy girl is.
Buffy's annoyed when Spike walks in and tries to flirt with her before walking away. So this must have been the point when the writers said, oh, Spike hasn't shown up yet.
Ben comes back and asks Buffy if she wants him to confront Spike, but she says no, and I was kind of hoping we'd get to see that. And he gives Buffy his phone number, which catches her off guard.
Which is also Glory's phone number, the demonic god who wants to kill Buffy's sister and destroy the world.
That raises a lot more questions that I will bring up in my wrap-up.
I was hoping that maybe Ben had a phone that Glory didn't know about, and whenever he feels himself transforming, he just has to chuck that phone out the window and then go find it when he transforms back into Ben.
Which would make sense if we know that Glory and Ben are not on the same side. I mean, Glory could easily be messing with him by deleting messages or, trying to get him to do what she wants him to do. And she's crazy. She could easily just break the answering machine or tear the phone out of the wall.
And we have to remember that whenever Ben appears at any moment, Glory could decide to just take over. So in this very scene, Ben could just transform into Glory.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know if she does it willingly or if it just happens.
It seemed like that from the last episode.
Well, either way, we know that Ben can't control it. And that's the important part.
But of course, the part that is not brought up by the show.
Of course. Spike talks to the happy girl who says her name is April, and he tries to come onto her, which causes her to get pissed off and pick him up and throw him out a window, saying that Warren is her boyfriend and only he can touch her.
Buffy approaches April and says they should talk, but April throws Buffy across the room too.
And for some reason, the shot of her falling is interrupted by a reaction shot of Willow and Tara, which makes it seem like she takes a long time to fall.
They must have just watched Superman 2 when that kid fell off that waterfall. I think I brought that up last episode too, didn't I?
I can't remember when you did, but it was recently.
You're going to have to go find that clip again.
April tells Buffy she hopes Buffy's boyfriend will take care of her if she's hurt, and she leaves.
Later, the gang is discussing the incident, and they all decide then and there that April is a robot. There is no question about it. There is no other possible explanation.
It's treated as a joke, but it felt like the writers just couldn't figure out how to have them figure that out in a way that made sense. And Buffy tells Willow to look up any Warrens on campus the next day.
Like it's a huge technological feat to look up people named Warren. And only Willow can do it.
I thought it was ridiculous that they think it's not like all Warrens are going to be listed somewhere other than maybe the phone book, but could you search the phone book online? I don't know.
They're assuming he's a student. What if he's not? He won't be in any directory for the school.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
And what if he's the guy who goes by his middle name or something?
Plus, he could be from literally anywhere. They don't know where this girl came from, so why would they think that he was from that area if they've never seen her before?
He could have arrived at Sunnydale's train station, or Sunnydale's space pad, or any other location that Sunnydale has.
That helipad that Riley left from.
The launch site where all the rockets come in.
When Buffy gets home, Giles complains about having to babysit Dawn while Joyce is on a date, which brings up the fact that, again, Glory knows where Buffy lives and has already promised to kill her friends and family. And it sure has taken her a while to recover from getting teleported away a couple episodes ago.
Then Joyce enters, very happy about how her date went.
I guess she also forgot that her daughter is being targeted for destruction by multiple parties. It's a good thing they left Giles there, because who knows what could have happened.
Yeah, Buffy should have dropped Joyce and Dawn off at Spike's crypt.
And then we see April walking door to door at night, asking people if they've seen Warren.
The next day, at the magic shop, Willow has identified who Warren is, and Xander is fantasizing about having his own sex robot.
And he comments on how attractive April was. And all the while that they're having this conversation, customers are just milling all around him.
Everyone is talking about how it's so sad that someone has to resort to something so artificial and can't find a real person to have a relationship with. And what a loser that person must be. And Buffy just kind of sits there sinking lower and lower into the floor.
So she goes to call Ben,
who is actually Glory at the time.
And when we cut to Glory, even though there's scary music playing, I really thought something else was happening.
Yeah, me too. The way she was reacting to whatever was happening.
Yeah, but it turns out she's just transforming into Ben. So I was a little disappointed or something, I don't know.
But then I bet you were happy once you saw Ben in that dress.
Uh-huh. Ben answers Buffy's call, and they awkwardly set up a date.
Meanwhile, Warren is packing and tells his girlfriend that they need to leave ASAP when Buffy shows up.
His girlfriend Katrina gets upset, saying there are too many strange girls that he is apparently involved with, and too many secrets, and she runs off.
Warren tells Buffy that April is a robot. It's a huge reveal, but it doesn't faze her because they already assumed that, and we're correct.
Of course. At the magic shop, Dawn mentions Ted, which I was actually glad about because it at least acknowledges that they've dealt with robots before.
Where did he come from? I don't remember.
I don't remember either, which is probably good because it was probably a really stupid explanation. But this is actually the third time after I, Robot You Jane that they've dealt with robots, which is a lot of times for a show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Which one was that?
That was back in season 1 when Willow got catfished by the robots in the internet.
There's like a demon robot, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was at least more to it than just being a robot, but the end fight came down to a robot.
That was the Doom monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to cash in on the hot trends of the time. Spike busts in with his blanket on fire, which he quickly puts out. But why is the blanket on fire when he is not? I can only assume it had nothing to do with him being a vampire and that he accidentally caught it on fire with a cigarette. That's why I don't smoke. I don't want to risk catching myself on fire.
Or your blanket.
Yeah.
The gang is all pissed at Spike, and they're acting like they don't like him, and they don't want him there, which they should have been doing for the past 40 episodes, but they decide to do it now.
Giles gets particularly aggressive and tells him they aren't his friends, and tells him to get the out. But of course, they still don't kill him, and they even give him his blanket. But I was wondering why he went there anyway. This clearly felt like one of those let's just shove Spike in somewhere instances, because he didn't do anything, and even when he comes in, he just says, hey, what's going on? Why is he getting there in the middle of the day? What's the point?
I think every time he shows up from now on, it's just one of those instances.
Unfortunately, you're probably right.
Meanwhile, Buffy is gathering info about April from Warren, who says he made April to be perfect for him, but she was so perfect that he got bored. And he didn't dump her, he just left, which is why she's been searching for him.
He says her batteries were supposed to have run out on their own, and she must be recharging them somehow.
But they never explain that.
Correct. one of many problems I had with this episode.
And Buffy sees the events from her own personal perspective and says she needs to find April because she's dangerous.
At a park, April runs into Katrina and she asks about Warren. And Katrina says Warren is her boyfriend, which causes April to grab her, telling her to tell the truth. And we randomly cut to an angry Spike packing up his crap, saying he's leaving.
Buffy and Warren go to find April, and Buffy tells Warren that he needs to come clean. Coming at it from the perspective of, you need to take into consideration these robots' feelings, instead of, you need to turn the robot off, was weird.
Agreed. You didn't see her thinking about Ted's feelings when she murdered him the second time.
I get that Buffy is seeing things from her own personal experiences, but turn the robot off.
Buffy gets Warren to tell April to release Katrina, and Warren talks to April, who says she was waiting for him to come back. He tells April that he can't love her back, and for some reason, he then tells her that he loves Buffy, which didn't make any sense for him to do, but the writers couldn't figure out any other way to get them to start fighting.
Yeah, so Warren had stated earlier that April was only programmed to love him, and from all of the UI we see from her perspective, it appears that is true. But then to have her go into combat mode?
Well, listed in the file directories, it did also say defend Warren or something like that.
But I would think defend Warren might be like a verbal thing. Like, I'll stand up for Warren, not I will kill people to defend Warren.
Yeah, but you're talking about an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
True.
April attacks Buffy, very convincingly breaking off part of a seesaw to use as a weapon, which I thought was really funny. Buffy snatches it from her and hits her with it, and we get the same exaggerated sound effects as when Ted got injured. Katrina wakes up, and when she realizes April is a robot, she runs off with Warren in tow.
During the fight, April's batteries finally start to run out. So she sits down, and she and Buffy have a heart-to-heart and discuss the purpose of April's existence. And April says when things are sad, you just have to be patient. And Warren must have just watched The Dark Knight because she spits out Harvey Dent's press conference speech pretty much word for word.
It's getting dark. It's so early to be dark.
The night is darkest just before the dawn.
What if he comes back and he can't find me in the dark?
And I promise you, the dawn is coming.
Things are always darkest before.
Things are worse than ever.
No more dead cops. Maybe not that line.
We see Xander repairing the window that April threw Spike through. Why is he the one doing that? What a coincidence that somehow he was the one hired to fix that window.
He probably offered to do it on the side.
Yeah, that's possible. Buffy talks about how April was devoted to making Warren happy and says that when he left, there was no reason for her to exist anymore. She says she's realized she doesn't need to focus on being in a relationship and can just be happy by herself for now.
And then she calls Ben to tell him that them getting involved isn't good right now.
So again, she's only thinking of herself.
And I actually thought for a second, after she gave that whole speech about needing to be herself and not needing a guy right now, she was going to call Ben and continue their date.
I thought maybe that was going to be her telling him that she's the Slayer. You know, just being open about everything.
Doesn't he already know that?
Well, he does, but she doesn't know that he knows that.
Oh, yeah. This show, man. So deep.
Yeah.
So many threads.
And it turns out that Gloria is listening to Buffy's call and thinks that Ben might have been trying something.
And she's just as confused as any person would be who's aware of what's going on in this show.
What the hell?
Warren calls Katrina and tries to win her over, but she hangs up on him.
And then Spike enters, saying Warren's mom let him in. And he has all this Buffy stuff and tells him to make a Buffy robot. So that's going to be a thing.
And I wondered how he knew about Warren.
But Spike knew that April was looking for Warren. So he probably has the same hacking skills as Willow. Or, just looking
Okay.
in the white pages.
So you're saying he's a more dangerous character than we realized. Okay.
He can read.
I mean, that puts him a step up from some of our main cast, probably.
Yeah.
Buffy gets home and sees flowers from Joyce's new boyfriend. And when she goes to find Joyce, she apparently finds her dead on the couch. I was made to love you. Overall? Oh, I wanted to try to fit in the Kiss song. I was made for loving you in there somehow.
I was thinking it was so close to the Queen song so we could get the Queen counter in this series too.
Which song is that?
I Was Born to Love You.
Okay.
So there's a lot happening in this episode. Pretty much all of the characters had something to contribute, whether it was related to the main story or doing some character building on their own. Buffy relating everything going on to her personally was expected, but her and Ben toying with a relationship makes zero sense from Ben's perspective, since he is Glory. He could solve a bunch of problems by telling Buffy, who he now knows is a Slayer, everything he knows about Glory and her plan, and the fact that he is her. And since that's all that matters to Buffy, at least in the episodes where that's all that matters to Buffy, they could do a lot to stop Glory. The robot thing being used as a device for main character stuff was nice. It's nice when things actually relate to each other once in a while on this show. And I was so thankful that the show seemed to be wrapping up Spike's obsession with Buffy, with everyone telling him to f off and kicking him out, but then he found out about sex robots. So that's going to be the next step in this process. I was happy that Joyce got more than one line in this episode, because her arc of her illness was super important back when it was happening, and then they just kind of threw it out. But the last scene of Buffy finding her felt very thrown in. The Spike Warren thing felt like the end of the episode, but then they realized, we got 15 more seconds of runtime, and they threw in the Joyce thing. I wasn't bored during this episode, so that's a plus. But the nonsensical plot lines continue, even when it seems like they're going to finally burn out, so that's a minus. This one felt middle of the road to me. I gave it a C.
Okay, I gave it a C-. I agree that it wasn't a boring episode. It was mildly entertaining at times, but it was so dumb that I almost went to a D+. This was one of those episodes where characters kept making assumptions that turned out to be accurate just because, and while handling that in a comedic way was mildly amusing, it still felt very lazy, and that's a big part of why I gave it such a low grade. And I did somewhat wonder what the point of this episode was. For Buffy, it did at least make an impact in making her not feel sorry for herself for at least 5 minutes, but we didn't need an entire episode to get there. And Spike at the end ordering a robot Buffy is something that clearly is going to go forward in some way. I can only imagine that it'll result in some really intelligent and deep episodes in the future. And after Giles threatening him, it seems like a weird direction to go in, because that scene with Giles, it seemed like they were maybe trying to go in a more serious direction with Spike again, but I guess not.
Speaking of Giles, when they brought up April being a robot in the first place, Giles acted really weird about the whole thing and kept finding excuses to walk away from the conversation. So I was wondering if he had some secrets of his own. Did you notice that?
I thought he was just trying to handle the customers, because it was in the middle of the store while they're open.
Maybe I was just ignoring the customers, like everyone else.
It's easy to do because they don't talk.
Yeah, I thought maybe after Spike commissions a robot from Warren, we'd cut to Giles working in the back room of the magic shop trying to build a robot of his own. But really poorly, because he's Giles.
See, that would be stupid, but it would be funny. The actual storyline of this episode with Warren and April felt very thrown together. At least with Ted, as dumb of an episode as Ted was, they had more of an interesting explanation. This one was the fact that the characters immediately figured out what was going on shows how simple and uninteresting the idea was in this episode. I thought Xander and Willow both commenting on how attractive April was going to come up in some way, like April having some kind of attraction power besides just how she looked, but it didn't. So I thought it was weird that they stuck those moments in there. And Warren talked about April's batteries running out, but they never explained why they lasted longer than they were supposed to. And what a coincidence for them to finally run down at the climax of the episode.
Additional question. So Warren is just a college student who has the ability to build a very lifelike sex robot. Where did he gain that knowledge?
It's like that episode where the kids were putting bodies together and bringing them back to life.
Yeah, but they were using magic or something, right?
I don't think so. I think they just explained it away as a Hellmouth thing.
Oh.
But in this case... Oh wait, I guess Warren was from Sunnydale. I mean, it's still kind of dumb.
More than kinda.
And Xander was in this episode a decent amount, so that's a big negative. And I really hope they're not trying to get things going again with him and Buffy.
It seems like they are, because every conversation they have, Buffy usually ends it with, "Man, I wish I could find a guy like you."
Yeah, and Xander's like, oh, you're the perfect person to be with, or something like that. And they keep kind of looking at each other at the end of the conversation when they don't have any more dialogue. And it's very disturbing.
Yeah, it's also weird that one or both of them says, man, I'm getting real riled up.
The two of them getting together would be the absolute worst thing I could imagine, and not just for this show, but in general. And now Joyce is dead, apparently. And it wasn't even Glory that killed her. So we'll see what happens with that. That would obviously be a big development.
Well, I mean, she probably should have mentioned to her new boyfriend that she was deathly allergic to that specific type of flower.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. But it just leaves me wondering what Glory is doing all this time, now that she made that big threat to Buffy but hasn't acted on it. Yeah, she was banned for parts of this episode, but she was also just hanging out at her place for some of it. What does she do there? What is she doing with her time? And if she starts losing her mind when she hasn't CGI'd anyone in a while, how does that affect Ben? And is he going to start crying in the next episode when he realizes that Buffy isn't actually interested in him, apparently? Or was him asking her out actually part of some plan that he has to stop Glory, like Glory seemed to suspect?
But he doesn't seem smart enough for that.
Correct. And he seems actually interested in Buffy for some reason.
I bitched enough about this last episode, so I'm not going to go into it now. Boost our revenue by just watching that video, too.
It really just makes me wonder where things are going. I guess we'll find out, unfortunately.
So I guess the show's doing its job, keeping us engaged.
Hopefully you guys are engaged enough to stick with us. Because that's the only thing that keeps us going, is those 50 cents that come in every couple weeks.
And if you watch these, you don't have to watch the show.
Yeah, there you go. We're doing all you guys a favor.